All right, it is 7 o'clock, so we will call the meeting to order and begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, and can we do a roll call, please?
Robertson.
Here.
Racine is absent and excused. Augustinelli.
Here.
Castiglione.
Here.
Fudge.
Here.
DeGood is absent and excused. Yulee.
Here. All right, so at this time we have first public comment. If we have anybody that would like to make public comment, you can please approach the podium and give us your name and address. All right, we will close public comment. Next up, we have review and approval of the agenda and statement of any conflicts of interest.
I'll make a motion, we approve the agenda as presented.
Support.
Okay, from Agostinelli and Fudge, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. I feel like the bar is high to move along quickly in Chair DeGood's absence. I'll try to keep us rolling. You guys might have to correct me once or twice here. All right, up next, we have approval of the minutes from the March 11th meeting.
Make the motion to approve the minutes from March 11th.
Support.
Okay, from Robertson and Fudge, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, correspondence.
Yes, in your packet, you have one letter regarding the Dunn property rezoning on East Silver Lake Road. On your desk, you have two communications, one related to the Cherryland Electric Site Plan, another one related to the special use permit for the village at Garfield. Also, there are two other items that are not correspondence, but I just wanted to point them out on your desk. One is an item we'll talk under the bylaws agenda item, and that's from MSU Extension regarding approval of minutes. And then there's just another item, which is a bunch of the extended information related to the zoning ordinance amendments. That's it.
Any comments or questions for staff? All right, thank you. All right, reports, Township Board.
Yeah, I've got a couple of things. I had John print off this note from Grand Traverse County BPW having to do with a clay pipe that's in Cass and Airport Road, and just kind of explains that what's going on with that. We've got some pipe issues, and Jennifer Graham is working on solutions for that. So I'd bring that to your attention. Also, we have closed off Red Drive at the Commons. There was a water pipe or drainage pipe that broke in the middle of that road, and it was gushing up water. So we have maybe temporarily and maybe not just closed off both ends of that. We still have access to the park, the township park that's up in the hills there. The Creekside connection, Creekside was a PUD that was approved here, and at the time there was a connection to South Creek. It was part of that PUD. They've been kind of talking about it for 20 years or more, and sounds like they're coming to some kind of a resolution on that. But there'll be a pedestrian connection there and another pedestrian connection going up into Marketplace. So there's that. And then the Long Lake water connection has been approved by the city. So that deal that we had, whether or not they were going to use our infrastructure to get out into Long Lake Township, city's okay. So that's it.
Thank you. ZBA, did they have anything?
I don't believe so.
And did Parks and Rec Commission have anything?
Not yet. Their next meeting is April 6th, so I think 2 days before our next meeting, so we'll have something for the next one.
Great. Joint Planning Commission?
Their next meeting is April 15th.
All right. Moving on to staff report.
I don't have anything to report, but just wanted to mention there, that on that one correspondence regarding the Village at Garfield, which was a multifamily development project that was proposed at the northwest corner of Garfield and Hammond. We had been working with Brian Stadler on that project, and he was anticipating obtaining funding from MISTA for that particular project. It didn't go forward, so that project is no longer progressing, and we accepted the email correspondence, but we were talking probably at some point here we need to go through a process for these that actually have a recorded report and decision order, that we should have something recorded that says that the essentially, the permit is rescinded. And it should be recorded with, since that RDO is recorded at the Register of Deeds, it goes with that property. We should have something follow up to that, just to go on record for that property to say that that special use permit is no longer valid. Technically, we don't have anything in the ordinance that addresses it for special use permits. We do have it for planned developments, and so we could probably replicate that same type of language. I don't think it's a critical thing at this point, but when we do amend the ordinance to provide some type of provision of rescindment for this type of situation, we can go at that point, I think, and probably have some document recorded that would say that that permit is no longer valid for that site and reverts back to whatever it is. I mean, it does that by the nature of that it's going to be expiring here regardless, but just to have something since it is recorded with that property. But that's about all I got at this point.
Just out of curiosity, do you have any insight, when they say MISTA rescinded their funding, does that mean this was like previously allocated funding that somehow got clawed back, or like what causes that to happen?
So there's different sources of funding through MISTA. This was some type of a bond program, so I'm not sure exactly, I don't think it was necessarily a LIHTC project. So I'm not sure exactly what that all means. So, but I know in talking with Brian Sadler, it was something that they were going back and forth, and I guess at some point they decided not to fund the project.
Too bad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was a good site plan. I thought it was done very well.
Any other questions on staff report? Thank you. So we will move on to 6A, old business. We've got PD 2026-41, Cherryland Electric Site Plan Review Follow-up.
So I think we got the applicant here. We can probably have them explain how they responded based on the last discussion that you had. It was primarily the boundary on the west side of the property.
Good evening, Planning Commission members. Jerry Tomzak, Cunningham Limp, project manager on the project. Also with me is Bob Vershav from Gosling, Zubek Civil Engineering. We did design a revised plan to accommodate a landscape berm along the west side. It's quite an extensive berm, and it's approximately 5 foot in height to help screen the neighbor. Selperts is here. Frank, I believe, met with her to discuss the proposed plan and was in agreement with what's being proposed. That includes landscaping on top of the berm, on most of the west side, where there is the potential for the truck lights, screening those. We also provided a section cut to help profile for you how that realistically would look with the truck, and then to show that it would screen those lights. So approximately 5 foot in height, landscape to accommodate what the request was a few weeks ago. Could answer any questions you might have.
I'll just also add real quick, we did add additional plantings along that buffer line or the property line in addition to evergreens on top of the berm. So we just took out, or we were kind of using some of these pine clumps in our buffering calculation, but we just ignored them and put the full planting schedule in there.
Thoughts?
Looks good to me.
Yeah, there's a cross-section, and it's right before the lighting details, you'll see it shows the scale of the berm at 5 feet. There's also the plantings, which are substantial on top of the berm. I put it in the reports. Counted, there's 56 white and black spruce trees planted on the berm, and they're at 8 foot, which the ordinance only requires 6 foot, so they've gone above and beyond that requirement. The berm's roughly, I mentioned it was roughly about 725 feet, so it's a pretty substantial berm, and then in addition to that is the buffer landscaping between the berm and the property line as well. So it'll give it more, some varied definition, and won't just be a completely, berm and the evergreens. We do have a recommended motion at this point. I think everything has been addressed. Some of the conditions that are on there are really how this development fits in the rest of the development that's going to be occurring for the Olson property. The water sewer extensions to serve the property, the north-south roadway, stormwater management, all those things. So I think for the most part, we feel it meets the requirements.
I'll make the motion that the findings of fact for application SPR 2026-02 as presented in Planning Department Report 2026-41 and being made a part of this motion be adopted.
Support.
Okay, motion from Robertson, support from Augustinelli. Anybody else? Further discussion? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'll make the motion, the second motion, that application SPR 2026-02 submitted by Cherryland Electric Cooperative for contractor's establishment on parcel number 05-014-049-08 located at 1776 South Garfield Avenue.
That's an error.
Okay, so what is it? What, Rennie School, or is it
Rennie School
Olson?
Road.
It's not Olson Boulevard?
No, Rennie School, we'll just call it Rennie School Road, because I don't know if it has an address
Okay.
at this point or not.
So
Is the parcel number
located,
correct?
the parcel number, which I just indicated, located on Rennie School Road, be approved, subject to the following conditions,
No.
1 through 7, as indicated in Planning Department Report 2026-41.
Actually, it's the parcel number is 05-032-001-07. It's on the front of the report. Apologize for the error.
Okay. You want me to reread that? You're fine.
Yeah, why don't you reread that,
So it was on the front of this report.
just so we have it.
Parcel number 05-032-001-07, located on Rennie School Road.
Yep.
Good. Okay, motion by Robertson. Support by Augustinelli. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Thank you all very
On
much.
behalf of Cherryland Electric, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Okay. For 6B, we've got PD 2026-42, potential zoning ordinance amendments discussion.
So, just before, we're going to go through some items for discussion regarding zoning ordinance amendments. Fortunately, the TV's not working here right now, so we put it on there and on the screen, but, so these handouts aren't necessarily something you need to read, but they're just, we wanted to show you some parts of the ordinance and the changes. So we're going to go through them. Steve's going to do the first three, which are stormwater management, ZBA, and mobile food vending units, and then I'll follow up the last two. But at this point, this is discussion, trying to get feedback, some ideas that we're putting out there so that we can work towards developing the type of language that you want to see within the ordinance on these different subject items.
Some of these we had already started either discussing or kind of seen some draft, but kind of as preparing a potential, we often do every year a package of zoning ordinance amendments. So these seems to be the ones that have momentum behind them or had some discussion. So one of which, recently the township adopted a new stormwater management ordinance, ordinance number 80. It was an update and actually replacement of the previous stormwater ordinance, more comprehensive, establishes that there would actually be a stormwater permit, which would tie up more closely with, like we had often, as follow-up to site plan approvals or special use approvals, we often has that language of like all agencies shall have their approvals before any land use permits are issued. And we had sort of relied on Gordy Frazier doing their like review letter. That's now going to be tied to an actual stormwater permit. So that will be a permit. It's a township permit, but basically that is taken care of before a land use permit or building permit is issued. So it's just really crystal clear. And there are other things in the stormwater ordinance that sort of modernized it, updated it, and that has all of the technical language. So what's here, though, is there is a section in the zoning ordinance that's specifically about stormwater management, and there's also other references kind of throughout the ordinance, throughout the zoning ordinance, I should say. And the thought, like during the discussion, so the update of the stormwater ordinance was, at least the technical part was kind of led by township engineer and the team at Gordy Frazier, and our zoning administrator, and planning staff assisted a little bit with that, but they really took the lead on that. And kind of through some discussion, it seemed to make sense that like most of the technical information and most of the bulk of the language about stormwater would be in the stormwater control ordinance. Since that was like newly adopted, comprehensive, and it's what the engineer, both our township engineer and engineers for applicants would be looking at for the technical information. So it seems to make sense to sort of rectify what's in the zoning ordinance. A lot of this, some of this language or some of these things are already mentioned in there and in more technical detail. It seemed to make sense that the zoning ordinance could potentially just be simplified and reference that those standards and sort of limit any stormwater references in the zoning ordinance to it would comply with the stormwater ordinance. You need to submit stormwater information as part of a development application. Sort of limit it to things like that, but to have most of the technical information, like for example, it talks about low impact design, which is still definitely a good thing to have and maybe even reference, but that it goes into more detail, from my understanding, in the stormwater control ordinance that actually gets some like technical information behind it. So a potential, like all we included right now is just the sections as they are written for 523 and 524. That's the bulk of the stormwater references. 523 and 535, I should say. That's the bulk of the stormwater references. There are some others throughout, but most of those are just reflexive to submit this as part of a site plan or development plan. This would be good for if we wanted to pursue kind of updating the ordinance along this line to also engage the township engineer, since they have the familiarity and were instrumental in crafting the stormwater control ordinance to say what makes sense to leave in here, what makes sense to just sort of reflexively reference. But this is a potential area of essentially cleanup after adopting that updated stormwater ordinance. So any questions on that specifically?
I have some comments on the
Okay,
language.
yep. Yeah, questions or comments?
So when I was reading through the setbacks from lakes, rivers, and streams, it says from the watermark.
Mm-hmm.
On site surveys, I usually see ordinary high watermark or high level
Mhm.
watermark.
Okay.
Watermark could be interpreted differently as the watermark at this point in time instead of the ordinary high level watermark.
Right. Yeah, that seems like that should have a specific definition to it, and that is the one I've probably heard the most
And
as well.
Ordinary high watermark is regulated by Eagle, or is it, yeah,
Mhm.
by Eagle and some townships, depending on if it's
Yeah.
in Lake Michigan or,
Like it's already used and understood what an ordinary high water mark is. Yeah. Okay.
I know they just raised it a few years back for insurance purposes, but
Okay.
it's,
And
it would essentially move that setback
Yeah.
higher up on the land.
do you know what would Eagle, or does the state set them for all the lakes? Would they set it for Silver Lake and
So
Boardman
we
Lake?
set that a few years ago for Silver Lake. We changed it a foot.
We did, okay.
Yes, and,
All right.
well, Gordy Frazier's came to us and wanted it changed, but something was, you guys, anybody else here then? We actually, had to vote on it.
Oh.
It was recommended to us, but just to clear it up.
Okay.
So it's somewhere,
Okay.
Yeah, we'll check with the
it's somewhere in the
engineer.
records, and, because we changed it, because ever since they did that draining back in the 80s, they never changed it, I guess, and then it caused trouble. But anyway, it's probably 6, 8 years ago, 10 years
Okay.
ago, maybe that they, so
Okay.
anyway, there's records of
Okay.
it.
Yeah.
And that we approved it here to, I don't know if it's why we did, but.
I believe there is a website where you could go look for the high level mark.
Okay.
I'm more familiar with it on Lake Michigan than.
Yeah.
Mhm.
We'll check on that one, because I know that's a regulated lake. There's an outlet and everything like that, so there's,
Is that the
We'll check
outlets
out-
at the south end of the lake?
yeah.
Okay.
Dammed, I believe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so we'll check on that to me.
I'm not sure about Boardman River, though. It seems like that could get into floodways, which is more complicated than just.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, because that changes as you go downstream, it keeps moving, so.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where we were looking at this one, where that next paragraph where it talks about stormwater retention or detention ponds with the setback of 50 feet, we wanted to make sure, what we were trying to do is people were only go, if there's a stormwater issue, go to the stormwater management ordinance. You don't have to go to the zoning ordinance. And if there's some type of requirement like that, we need to make sure, do we need to state it here, or is it already stated in the stormwater management ordinance? We didn't want conflicting dimensional requirements or anything like that, so there's those types of things to make sure that we only were working off of one ordinance. Now, if some of this does need to be retained in the zoning ordinance for whatever, we will, but that's kind of an example of why we want to make sure that it's really clear which is the appropriate ordinance to refer to.
Seems like one place would be better than two
Yeah.
places to look and to give you guys less questions.
Right. Yeah.
Especially with the details of it mostly going to the township engineer for that technical review. It's like it gives them one place to go, and then the permitting part can be at the township level and kind of have a clear separation of duties. Okay.
Any other thoughts on stormwater, or we'll move on to the next one?
Okay. Next one came to us from our zoning administrator in regards to a section on the zoning board of appeals, specifically to just add a couple, or add a little bit of language on some of the procedures. Similar to how Plan Commission, we have a findings of fact that we make, or that staff prepares at the direction of Plan Commission votes on, to kind of establish that same clarity for Zoning Board of Appeals as well. that ZBA shall make a findings of fact on which to base a decision. And then as part of the decision process itself, that to basically highlight that it's to base on evidence on the record that it complies with the zoning ordinance, state law, federal, and if it does not actually render, so also talk about the timing of it. If it does not render a decision on the date of the public hearing, to make a decision at or before the next regularly scheduled meeting. So just sort of clarifying procedures. Again, this came from the zoning administrator, so since we are not staff for the ZBA, this was just sort of, I think, a feedback from him as staff to the ZBA and probably as follow-up to some of their recent meetings. I would say if there's any questions, we could probably relay them to our zoning administrator, but this was sort of presented to us as a desired amendment.
Does that mean it's currently silent on the timing of making a decision? The addition of 5, does that mean we don't have anything currently that accomplishes that?
I believe so.
Yeah, that's probably something we should have.
Mm-hmm.
Thoughts?
Well, and it's, and the ZBA is a judicial type of quasi-judicial body, so it's different than doing, let's say, a development review. I mean, you could extend a decision, but I think it's important for that board to make that in a relatively timely manner, depending on the case.
It seems like anything that goes before the ZBA would be, how do I put it? Does not meet our zoning ordinance. Because if it wasn't presented, if it didn't need to be presented in front of the ZBA, then it complies with our zoning ordinance. It'd be nice to have some guidelines
Mm-hmm.
for them to act upon.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And some timelines. I felt when I was a fill-in member for the ZBA, it felt like it was tough for them to make any decisions.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of some guidance or some way to evaluate and kind of come to that conclusion. I mean, I think the findings of fact that's kind of what we do to some extent. I mean, there's, here at the Planning Commission, there's some of that discussion, but ultimately we go back to the ordinance and there's, whether it's a site plan or special use permit or whatever, we're going to provide, there's criteria there where you evaluate and base your decision. There's kind of some very black and white requirements, and then there's some subjective stuff that does allow for some interpretation, but overall there's general guidance in the criteria. So,
Were you talking about more like criteria for issuing a variance, or which would be one of the ZBA's realms?
Just in general.
Oh, or just more general, okay. I was gonna say variances are the next chapter in that part of the zoning house, but yeah, more general, that's a good question. There's, so this whole division, each article, some of the articles have divisions in them. This one is, there's a few sections that are relevant to the ZBA. So there is a, like, powers and duties of the ZBA, interpretations, appeals, and then variances. So there's sort of some sections to all of that. That's a good question on more just the, like a general guidance for the ZBA. It's something we can ask Mike, but.
And I think, so like the Planning Commission, the ZBA can direct staff to prepare findings of fact that address specific things, like can you find similar situations and give us an idea of how those played out so that you could have more, because I think what you're saying is like the tools in your toolbox are not many when you're looking at something that's already outside of the established ordinance.
Mm-hmm.
That's fair.
mm.
Yeah.
It seems like the ZBA, that that should be included in the packet when, say, a variance is presented before the ZBA.
Some additional context on,
I don't know how that fits in to the zoning ordinance,
So are you
or
talking,
if that's more relying on the applicant to do those findings of fact.
so does the zoning administrator at least provide you with some analysis and some direction, or at least, or is it kind of really up to evaluate that?
That's a tough question to answer. ZBA is a little bit different. I found your findings of fact very helpful when we're doing planned use or SUPs.
And like our zoning administrator does staff reports to the ZBA, and there is, like the approval criteria is, at least I'm looking at the variance section, like, for example, if someone had a lot and they had an easement somewhere, so they needed to ask for a variance because there was a specific condition, there's a practical difficulty, as it discusses in there. I think some of what you're saying is like, yeah, they're asking for something that would not be allowed by the zoning ordinance, so what can they rely on? In that case, it's like the standards are still listed there as to why they'd ask for a variance, and if they were referencing things that are in the zoning ordinance, in that case, it would be the like dimensional requirement is this, they have a practical difficulty for actually complying with that because of something else, and so that's why they're asking for this. So they'd relate it back to like what relief they're asking for from the zoning ordinance, which is ultimately what a variance is, a relief from the zoning ordinance. So we'd still reference it sort of that direction. I don't know if that helps answer your question, but
No.
okay. Yeah.
Well, I would think with the provision for the findings of fact would be very helpful. I mean, that's, and maybe, that findings would be working through that same division or article that related to the ZBA. I'm sure there's some criteria that you could establish that findings of fact and at least
Right.
provided from the zoning administrator.
Right. And the area where it's proposed to, this language is supposed to be added specific to the appeals to zoning of appeals. So there's interpretations where ZBA can hear and interpret provisions of the zoning ordinance. They can hear appeals, whereas it alleged there's an error in a previously granted order, requirement, or decision or interpretation made by the zoning administrator or director of planning. So they can challenge an interpretation, in which case the sort of guidance would also be, here is what the applicant almost would have to say, here is what the interpretation is, here's X, Y, and Z, why I think it's incorrect, and sort of cite that. I think adding this to here is just to ensure that if ZBA, like if Planning Commission makes a decision, if they are going to make a decision, they kind of need to weigh in on that case specifically. So if it is an appeal and challenging an interpretation, findings should be based on, okay, we heard staff with their interpretation, we heard the appeal, we think this one makes sense or this one makes sense, and explain why they're doing that. Question.
But it may not be an interpretation issue. It may be
Right.
I need to move my driveway 6 inches over. So I'm asking for a variance to be able
Yeah.
to do that. These are the reasons why I need to move my driveway 6 inches. And then the findings of fact to me would be things like, how's that going to affect the neighbor? You know, is it, if you're dealing with acreage or something else, that'll be a lot different than if you've got a 25-foot lot, you know? And those kinds of things
Right, right.
would be the findings of fact.
Mm-hmm.
Is fact the right term?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's not really in our ordinances, and you're right, it's pretty loosey-goosey. I don't know how you nail that down. We can nail it down because we've got the rules in there. But this is, more subjective, I guess,
It's
right? They can,
because they're challenging an interpretation, so it's like, it's sort of, how does each, like, in theory, if someone's challenging an interpretation, in that example, there are two ways to look at it,
but
so
they're not
which is
challenging.
fact.
They know it's wrong.
Right,
Or they know
right.
that it's off.
Exactly.
They're
so-
just wanting to pick up some
Yeah.
extra.
Okay. That's a good question. I don't know. We could talk with Mike a little more in depth. When he brought it to us, it made sense of like why something needs to be in here to kind of clarify procedure and process.
There does have to be something in there, because I sat on that board, and if you get 5 people there, you got 5 different opinions when they vote.
Mm-hmm.
You need some kind of a record on what they're using as their guidelines to make their decision.
Mm-hmm.
Call it what you want,
Was-
finding of facts or whatever, but
Did you receive a report then from the zoning administrator that would go down and maybe, like, here's the situation you're in, here's
nope.
evaluation? Okay.
They didn't do
No,
a staff
nothing.
report?
So is there any type of a staff report at all, or just presenting the case?
Nope, he would bring the applicant in, introduce him, and tell him what he was gonna do, and he'd make his speech, we'd decide, move ahead. Pretty loose, there's not much of a paper trail on
Okay,
what's going on.
all right.
So I think that would be good, because just a matter of time before somebody's coming after us.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, well, I mean, and it doesn't, you know, you mentioned about, findings of fact, it doesn't necessarily have to be, fact, it could just be, we generally call findings, but it's evidence that's to say, okay, here's the situation, and here are the different
Here's why we
circumstances.
voted this way.
And these are, to give some direction, because otherwise, it could be all over.
Yep.
Plus, you want to make sure it's a decision that's going to be standing, it's not going to be
Right.
challenged, I mean.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yeah. No, those are good questions.
yeah, well, like, like Steve said, we'll talk with Mike about this, and take a look at it a little
Yeah.
bit deeper. I guess quite honestly, myself, I have not seen a lot of the ZBA packets and information that goes
Since we're not
out.
staff to the ZBA, we
Yeah,
don't.
we'll take a look
yeah.
at that.
Mhm.
But maybe go backwards and take a look at, these are the cases that have
Mhm.
come in.
Yeah.
What would be helpful to us looking at this case?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know, what do we need to know to
Yep.
make it more definite?
Right. Yeah.
But to your point about effects on neighbors, sort of like a risk-benefit sort of thing, like what's the benefit and to whom, and what's the risk and to whom? That would, if I was in that seat, that would help me make a decision, maybe.
You're likely to have the neighbor sitting there.
Right.
Fair.
What would be helpful? So I'm just taking a note. What would be helpful in deciding this? In deciding these cases. So the next one is also one that we've looked at some of the language, and then we did have a discussion. It would have been last month at the joint meeting, and that was a month ago. It feels like it was 3 years ago.
That's 3 blizzards ago.
3 blizzards, that's why. Last month at the joint meeting of the Town Board and Plan Commission, so we did talk a little bit about the food trucks or mobile food vending unit. At least from our kind of decamping of that meeting, there was a lot of support for the doing it accessory to established business. There was a little more hesitancy on some of the like event based. I think there was some kind of stepping into dipping the toes into that idea, but not quite fully jumping in. But also being the Plan Commission looking at zoning ordinance updates. this could at least be the start, and this would be the most appropriate, I think, for the Plan Commission, especially looking at a package of zoning ordinance updates. We can focus in on this one first, and if there's still desire at the end of that to look at anything for like events, that could be like a later thing, but to kind of focus on the accessory ones first. So this is sort of pulling out, it would mostly affect a few areas, an actual definition, which we do have a current definition of food truck. We might just reflexively reference like an updated version. This sort of shows draft language, links it to the state act that kind of defines mobile food vending unit, that it's licensed, it's operable. The kind of draft regulations and conditions, which I believe we did kind of see a draft of previously, and that can be that could be tweaked, that could be kind of looked at in depth, and then where to permit them. One thing we did kind of notice is a lot of the discussion was that they would be accessory to an established business. Would it be the correct understanding to say an established like food business, like an established restaurant, not just established any business? I don't know if that needs to be answered, but I think looking at where the kind of draft, where they would be permitted with special conditions, CL, CG, CH, and CP
You're saying they won't be permitted on private property?
No, they would be as accessory, but they'd have to be like a spot for them. Yeah, not just kind of floating around, but notably, local commercial, general commercial, highway commercial, and planned shopping are the districts that allow restaurants. So I don't know if it was specifically tied to, or like specifically a type of business. The one that we got a request from is has a restaurant, or it also has a brewery, sort of more beverage service as the main thing. But I guess that's up to Planning Commission for what direction they think this should go. So that's just kind of a question that's posed out there.
Can you point out, I'm sorry, I'm missing it, where that piece is that links it to a current restaurant use?
It doesn't right now.
Okay.
It doesn't. I was more thinking based on the districts and based on like how food trucks are used, like all the examples we've seen and used when we've had our discussion, like the applicant that came to us, Silver Spruce in the city, and even like Little Fleet in the city, which has a bunch of them. There's some amount of, whether it's a restaurant or brewery or some kind of, there's a eating and drinking establishment of some kind that's attached. Like it's not like a food truck attached to a retail shop. It may or may not matter, but or we may never get a proposal for one of those things. But I don't know if we need to or want to be more specific. But it's a thought that came to mind when we were kind of coming up with all of the examples of where we actually see food trucks as accessory uses.
So if a car dealership or something wanted to have a big grand opening,
Right.
food truck there.
That was more of a event thing too, and I think we were focusing more on the like a permanent established food truck to start with. So this would not concern the event yet. Yeah.
That's where we're going.
Yeah.
We decided to kind of pull back to the original
Yeah.
concept, and
Yeah.
those can be phased in later. There will still have to be a complementary police power ordinance that would do the licensing that would go with this, that would be under the jurisdiction of the township board. So this would be one half of it. One thing I was thinking, though, you could have a situation, I'm thinking of, let's say, when Dr. Walls put in that K1 karting facility over there at the old Sears building. If maybe, he has food service there, but if for some reason he decided not to, it might be, for like a recreation business of nature, that might be appropriate to have some type of food service if they don't want to, have a kitchen. I think, in many instances, it's a situation where if you establish a kitchen, it's about also having to operate it and staff it. And if there's somebody that you know that already has some, a food truck could come on site, so it works out really well. So it could apply to maybe some other types of commercial businesses, but.
So you're saying leave that out, don't add anything in there?
Well, it's
about
up to
complement?
how you guys
I
feel.
agree with your scenario.
We can,
I don't think it's appropriate just to force it on a restaurant.
I agree with you.
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
I think our main interest is to ensure that it's part of something that's going to have the, services, the utilities, it's going to have restrooms, it's going to have all that infrastructure in there. I think that's what our main intent on, talking about that. So that's, so it's not just kind of floating out in a parking lot type of situation.
So let's say the curling club, they have beverage, they sell beverages there.
Mm-hmm.
If they wanted to put a food truck out front, could they put a food truck out front?
Right. And the intent is that it would serve the curling center. It wouldn't be just to serve to the general public. And I don't know if if that, anything in there that would distinguish that. I mean, the idea is to not be, it's supposed to be an accessory. So by
Right.
accessory means it's supplementing that type of
There's
established.
established use.
Yeah, it's not to say that somebody could come in there and just, it's supposed to be more of kind of added to the facility versus kind of an outward-facing type of situation. And maybe we need to take a look at that. But that was my vision of it, from what I've seen it used at certain businesses,
Right.
is it's like an attachment to it.
Well, my vision, I'm envisioning a little fleet type thing.
Yeah,
You got
yeah.
a bar, you got
Mhm.
brewery or whatever, or the one they're proposing on Cass, or,
Mhm.
Yeah.
I guess it could be whatever the brewery is that's up at Green Hill, Zimmerman, up there. That's one thing, but, so that means to me you gotta tighten it up
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
some way, because you've got lots of other places that, like the things that are at Grand Traverse Mall, that
Mhm.
might be selling alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
They could make the case that this improves our service, and, now we can have these tournaments and we got our food right there, and,
Mm-hmm.
are we gonna allow that? So I think we need to make it a little tighter.
Mm-hmm.
When you mentioned the curling center, what I was envisioning is it would be kind of almost attached to the facility versus something put out by Garfield Road, standing alone. That's where I was envisioning more it'd be someone in close proximity to the actual business operation.
And they could put it pretty close, they got room there.
Yeah, I think it could fit in there. I guess what I was saying is I wouldn't expect it to be, kind of detached in a way out by Garfield where it's kind of operating on its own. The intent is that
Right.
it's supporting as an accessory, and I think that's, we clearly made it in its definition as an accessory, so it has to be somehow aligned with the primary use.
So in Blair Township, there's the MI Coffee
Mhm.
fruit little vending units. It has a coffee drive-through, and that doesn't seem attached to any business.
Right, and that's what that we're not proposing through
And
this.
That's a
Can
good.
that happen in what we're proposing or not?
Well, that's where I think we need to look at this a little bit more, because that's not what we were envisioning. We were envisioning it, usually as an accessory, that implies that it somehow, in its operation, is related to the primary use. So it's not just something sitting out there in a parking lot.
Pastries and coffee. Could have a pastry food truck next to a coffee shop.
So related to that, kind of where my mind is going, and I think it needs to be defensibly an accessory use, whether that means saying a certain proximity or aligned branding or whatever. I think that using it in particular zoning districts only is a good way to have some guardrails on this. But also I think about coffee, a neat fit might be a bookstore that's got a coffee mobile vending, right? Because that's kind of really what this is about. What the food trucks kind of create is a third space. It's not work, it's not home, it's somewhere else. And that's very much Northern Michigan ethos, particularly in the summer, that people want a gathering space. And so I think in a lot of cases, think about Little Fleet or Silver Spruce, it's sometimes just as much about the environment as it is about the product you're consuming. So I see a place for that potentially with something like a bookshop or a small performance venue or something like that, where there's some natural tie-ins to people gathering. That's just my thoughts.
I mean, however we do it, I think it's got to be pretty specific, because we're coming up with a whole lot of different examples here. So what do we really want?
I think it's one where also the districts allow a lot of different things, and these are actually some really good examples, because the one I thought of was also, there's that one in Blair, and then there is like a coffee shop near Blue Vase in Interlaken, which is really good. I've stopped there before. That one, it's like, it is drive-through, which is, I think, some of these districts allow drive-throughs, but I think this definition is like, this is something else. If you're going to do a drive-through, you got to do a full-blown site, which could be an outlot of malls, which we do have. But if we're talking about an accessory, like this is an accessory thing, you could, by definition, at least was proposed, do it to some established commercial business. But I think that's part of the, to not have them floating out in the parking lot, because they can turn into drive-throughs. And drive-throughs, even though they are allowed, have site plan standards to them. So it's like, if you're going to do a drive-through, actually do a full site plan. If you're going to do a food truck, attach it to something. And I think the idea was still to have it as part of a site plan. Like, this is your pad where it's going to be. So we know it won't go float out into the parking lot. But whatever your commercial business, if it is attached somehow and you put it on a site plan, that could be all right.
Because we do have on that first item there in the regulations and conditions, says the unit shall occur solely on private property and on a designated hard surface location. So they do have to provide us with a plan that shows where it's at. I think we just need to have that added element to say that it's got to be attached or within certain feet of the primary building.
Or it cannot reduce parking space,
Right.
Yeah.
dedicated parking space
Like,
to us.
it is separate from a parking space. Yeah.
I almost wonder if associated seating, if we're encouraging people to gather and use the businesses and not to treat it like a drive-through or whatever, if associated seating, whether it be inside the primary business or with the accessory, be a requirement, not an option. Like your question about what do you want to see, what I want to
Right.
see is a gathering space that's comfortable for whatever group.
I would rather have people go there as a third space or a destination to spend more time at that location instead of
Grab and go.
drive through, grab coffee.
Right.
Yeah, I think we can certainly provide provision in there that there is no drive-through facilities, drive-up, pickup type of situation, and we can have its location, its proximity to the building and to the operation. I mean, in terms of the seating, I mean, I think we'll allow them to kind of, do however they want to do. We just want to make sure that it's not something out onto its own.
Just a curiosity question. How did you come up with 2 units? Why not 3 or? I mean,
Figure 2 is enough.
Two's enough?
It's a starting point.
It's
we
a
gotta,
starting
we gotta start
point.
somewhere.
Starting
Yeah.
Yeah, we didn't want it
Okay.
to be, I mean, the intent is not to, it's an accessory, so,
How are the lots divided at the Grand Traverse, not, Grand Traverse Mall or the Cherryland Center
so
Oh, the parcels.
parcels?
yeah, they're kind of all haphazard. It's usually based on, you have your anchors are typically have their own parking and their own building. And then you have the mall is usually some configuration of thereof.
Okay,
between.
so,
Yeah.
say at Cherryland Center, there's 5 businesses, can each business have 2 then?
It's a good question.
Only if they have
Uh,
beverage.
this says per property. I think we'd go by
Yeah, we go by parcel.
parcel.
Not by business.
No,
Yeah,
okay, so,
yeah.
So there's like, let's say there's 8 parcels there, so,
Yeah.
yeah, so maybe, I don't know, maybe one's enough. I don't know,
That's a good point. Yeah.
we can take a look at that, too. I mean, it's easier to extend these types of requirements, so if you kind of come in a
Start
little
at
bit
1 and go
conservative and
2.
say, oh, well, you know, maybe we need to go back, amend
Right.
it. You may find that you never have to do that, but it's always easy to adjust and allow to be more liberal in your provisions versus pulling back. Because then you're, particularly in zoning, because
Then
it
you're
runs with
taking
the
away
land and you're
something
creating
that-
nonconformities.
Correct.
So we don't
yeah.
want to do that. But
Right.
that's
Uh,
I think that Cherryland's a good example, that, you know, and that, it certainly would limit it, because there's not that many parcels. There's a
Right.
lot more businesses there than there are parcels.
mhm.
But that would be something we want to take a look at.
We also might want to clarify, rather than per property, actually say per parcel, since
Yeah.
parcel is that has a clearer legal definition than a property. Is like, what's the property? Like, the whole thing could be the property, but parcel has a definition.
And start with one, and then.
Could start with one, we can always ramp it up.
We
Yeah.
can always-
if you
It's
want
easy
to.
to amend it to adjust it to allow for more, should that
Mhm.
happen.
Yeah.
I mean, typically you don't see, I mean, it's usually, unless there's something like that's designed to be a cluster of them, like Little Fleet, typically,
Mhm.
you'll see just one at any given location for the most part.
Mhm.
They can obviously rotate those out too. Doesn't have to be the same one
Mhm.
continuously. They could alter them and change them out.
Do we have any food establishments or drinking them? I thought we okayed maybe some kind of brewery at the industrial down at this corner of Barlow and or Lafreniere in South Airport. Years ago, I remember we approved somebody, but that would be industrial. Do we have any food service or any bar type or brew pubs or anything in industrials? Any of the industrial zones where we'd want to add that to this? It was
Not
that
I'm
old
aware.
Essex Wire building is right in the very
Mm.
corner. They
Yeah.
applied for something. I don't think they ever built it.
Oh, okay.
But we were gonna, I think we gave them the okay. That would be industrial, right?
That corner, the southwest corner is industrial, yeah, across from
Okay.
the gas station.
Across
yeah.
from the gas
Yep,
station. Sure.
that is
So
industrial.
we approved,
Okay.
we gave them the approval. This is years ago. I don't think, they
Or
were
is there
right in the very
some-
corner.
Is there some commercial that's off the corner there? Sorry, I'm looking at the zoning map
There's a
there.
little bit of commercial.
Was it right on the corner? Did it
Well-
front South Airport?
Yes, it did, but I don't think it ever
Oh.
got built. But my question is, do we have
Okay.
anything in the industrial district that serves, that we would want to add that to this?
I would say we try to avoid that.
Okay.
The IG district, we're kind of, quite honestly, there's some retail uses in there we'd probably want to be careful of. because
Okay.
I-
Okay.
to me, the IG is light industrial, so that should be more like business park.
All right.
And then the IL should be the heavy stuff where you're kind of,
Mhm.
that gets me into the mixed-use neighborhood discussion. I don't think it's appropriate for a mixed-use neighborhood.
Okay.
Well, that falls
But
back.
that could be a discussion at the
Yeah.
board too.
hmm We had, because when we created mixed use, I think a lot of it was, there was some similarities to the local commercial, but then similarities to office, and then also had some residential. Come on, so that kind of landed in the middle. And we didn't have it on the list of to permit mobile food vending. I forget, did we have any type of, did we have restaurant in there of any kind?
yeah, I believe it's in there.
Okay. No,
In the mixed-use neighborhood.
in
district?
mixed-use neighborhood, yeah. Okay.
Sure it is, because it would have been local commercial was the base
Okay.
district used for that.
Yeah.
Check.
But since this one, that has a little bit more residential than like local commercial or office commercial has. Maybe that's a good point, that, yeah, that it wouldn't, I don't know though, that's a good question.
Yeah, restaurant without drive-through is a use permitted by special conditions. I know the conditions aren't much at all,
Right.
but that is in the mixed-use neighborhood district, because that would have been what was permitted in the,
The VFW hall on Veterans might want
Yeah.
a food truck at one point.
That's I believe that's a local commercial. Yeah, that's local commercial zoning right now. Yeah.
What if they switch to,
Right.
they ever wanted to
Yeah.
ever change their zoning use to
Mm-hmm.
mixed use for some reason that they can't have food trucks
Oh.
or whatnot.
Move your mic a little bit closer.
Oh.
Yeah. Sorry.
What about our golf courses? We don't have any of them that you would think they would want a food truck, do we? We'll deal with that later.
That's a good.
Crown has a restaurant.
Right, but they couldn't have a food truck
That's
if
a
they wanted, 'cause
PUD.
they don't fit in
Oh,
here.
yeah, no, they wouldn't, they wouldn't
Yeah.
fit.
I mean, they are a PUD already. That's a good question. That's probably how they have a restaurant.
Yeah, mixed use.
Like Bay, the other one over there, I said Bay something or the.
Bay Meadows?
Yeah, they couldn't have one either then, because they're,
They're an R1. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
but that's fine. We gotta get started here and then we can always change stuff.
Right.
yeah. For instance, I know one that was, talked about was the terra firma, which is in a PUD. So that, under this right now, that's in a separate PUD. It's not part of any of the commercial districts, so that would not be permitted. However, it is something to consider, because I know that they were in here trying to get a commercial kitchen, and, but there's concerns that once you establish that, it's basically turns it into a restaurant at that location. But if the planning commission wants to talk about that at some point, to me, a food truck provides some level of food service, but is not what I would equate to as a restaurant type situation. It's more limited typically. But right now, that would not be permitted there either.
That
They're
don't bother
set
me
up.
any,
Go ahead.
because they've never did any one thing they were supposed to do anyway, so
No,
if
they
they
haven't,
don't.
but it is set up nicely to park a food truck in there by that back deck and.
And that could be a police power. They could have a police power food truck come in for an event if it's.
If we get to that point,
Yeah.
that one, we kind of leaving that up for the board to kind of figure, at this
Right.
point, we're just kind of like, it was
Yeah.
too much to take on. We're like, let's just do
Yeah,
it
low
step by
key.
step.
Yeah.
Going back to the original request from down there in Cass Road, so.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're going in the right direction if you just adjust your, location, or that, that number one that you were gonna.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we'll definitely do some good feedback here that
Mhm.
we'll take a look at,
Mm-hmm.
refine.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
You guys generally do a pretty good job of gathering articles too. I wouldn't mind it if you can find any sort of success stories on smaller communities or mid-sized communities that have done something similar, or unanticipated consequences to address
Okay.
some of the concerns that came up.
Yeah. I think we can see what we can find. Yeah.
Thanks.
Smaller, mid-size communities, experiences with food trucks.
The next one is, I don't know if you get more comments on that, but the next one is the mixed-use suburban district. So, as you recall, we did the neighborhood, which is mainly built on the CL district, the local commercial district. This is something a little bit different between CL and general commercial. And it's something we really didn't anticipate, but what we thought was to create something a little bit more intensive, but still not be something that would be auto-oriented. So this would be probably a little bit more limited in how it would apply, but this was one where we could see being applied in areas like, for instance, when we were talking about the airport gateway project, which was amended in the master plan. This would probably apply to that area where you want to allow some commercial, but nothing that would, and other uses mixed in with it, but you really wouldn't want drive-throughs, car washes, things of that nature. You want to kind of keep it still having some character that would be appropriate for different businesses and services in that district. Another area potentially we looked at that could be is the Logan's Landing area, which right now is general commercial. So you could essentially put a car wash down at Logan's Landing if you wanted to right now. So that's where we were like, okay, we would like to allow some commercial in there, maybe some mix of uses, but not necessarily auto intensive, which we feel like we're going to continuously get those, particularly in terms of food service and so forth. We're going to see a lot of that. Another area that we looked at was actually on Garfield Road between South Airport down towards Hammond. So that's an area where right now we have some general commercial, we got some a little bit of local commercial in there. Again, it might be more appropriate to have something to allow for a good mix of commercial uses, but not necessarily some auto-intensive types of things, so that we can concentrate those in the areas that are best equipped for it, that can handle it. So those were at least 3 areas that we thought of. There might be some other areas. But in terms of the uses, or the district itself, there's some of the development principles which carry forward some of the concepts here in terms of the mixed use, connectivity, kind of what the character of it, of that particular area is going to look like. The uses that are permitted by right, you can see them, that are listed there. Offices, financial institutions, so you could have a bank but no drive-through. Professional studios, rehab centers, low-volume retail, which is tends to be, I think that's 5,000 square feet or less. I believe it's 5,000, or is it 10,000? Maybe it is 10,000. Let's take a look at it. So
Double check it, no.
Yeah, but basically, that would be equivalent to, like, let's say a Walgreens is about 10,000 square feet. Service establishments, local shopping center, so you could have something, that's a small scale one, so similar to, let's say, the fourplex unit that you approved for a few years ago over there by Cherryland, where there's the Starbucks and the other 3, or kind of like similar to the outlot building there by J.C. Penney, something that would be allowed as a local shopping center.
Low volume retail is 5,000, by the way.
Okay, so it's
Yeah.
5,000, so it's even less than a Walgreens.
Mhm.
Okay, you might want to look at that. But
good
anyways, then use is permitted by special conditions. So just want to point out a couple ones in there. So it does have multifamily dwelling, but that's section 615, which means it has to be above or behind the commercial. So that would be a situation where if you wanted, let's say, apartment units above a store or behind a store, those would be permitted. So that's what that section 615, which is already currently in the ordinance. It's one way of allowing some residential within their commercial districts. Noted there is hotel motel, which comes with all of the conditions in the ordinance currently. Restaurant without a drive-through, again, allowing for those restaurant facilities, but avoiding kind of those drive-through businesses. And then some of the uses that are by special use permit, commercial district housing development, institutional uses, which is pretty much are mostly permitted in a lot of our districts by special use permit. And then we also have some of the standards in terms of dimensional standards, minimum lot area, 10,000 square feet, lot width, 100. Not sure why we don't have a maximum I guess for most of our commercial districts, we don't have a maximum building height in terms of stories.
Usually they're in feet.
Yeah, just particular
Yeah.
feet. It's usually only residential that we deal with stories.
Mhm.
And then setback requirements, which are kind of standard to a lot of our commercial districts.
So, question on the solar energy system that you're looking at for a special use permit. Are you talking about a solar array? These are more commercial, smaller pieces. When I'm looking at that, I'm not thinking about,
Mhm.
100 acres. I'm thinking about smaller pieces of land for that mixed use
I think that and
applications.
like that and major essential service facility came from, I think, solar energy system and maybe even essential service says like they're allowed a special use permit in any district.
In any district.
I believe that's actually the language in that section. And I think that's why that's just carried over from, and I think the use chart reflects that. If we wanted to take that language out at some point, because maybe in some districts it doesn't make as much sense to do that.
What
yeah.
kind of
Yeah,
looking at the land mass,
right.
a mixed-use subdivision,
Mm-hmm,
you're not gonna have 10-acre pieces
right.
probably, or 5 acre. So
Mm-hmm,
you wouldn't want it on 2 acres. You wouldn't want a
correct,
solar
yeah.
array on 2
Mhm,
acres
yeah,
in the middle of a
right.
mixed use,
Mm-hmm,
would you? If that's what you're thinking about,
right.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest with you, don't envision it, but like, yeah, that's how they were permitted in all districts is by special use permit for the solar energy system primary, which means it would be a standalone like system like you're talking about. But that's how it's currently permitted in all districts. And then accessory, which would be like, let's say, a rooftop solar array or something like that,
Different.
that would be a use by right with some conditions in there.
Mm-hmm.
but it's special use, so if they came in, you could say, well, it doesn't fit on 2 acres, so.
Then there's pretty extensive like special use requirements for both of those, so I potentially could cover it, but also I think if we looked at that, we might want to just take out that sentence in there that says permitted by special use in every district. Like the use chart and the districts already tell you what districts they'd be allowed in, and that would give us more freedom to take them out of ones where they maybe don't belong.
Yeah,
Yeah. That could, that's a good question.
yeah.
Mhm.
I guess as we're, when we were talking about solar energy systems like that, we're just, kind of, well, if a special use permit will allow us to, and plus with the conditions that are in 773 would allow us to, address that. And maybe, I don't know, we'll take a look at that too, but yeah, it is allowed throughout all those districts, and maybe that's not really what we want in there.
But when the districts have a
Right.
very, very small land mass,
Mhm.
I mean, the likelihood is pretty low. right?
Exactly,
they
yeah.
could do a rooftop,
Yeah, that,
Mhm.
something else, and
Right.
that might make sense,
Right.
but just to cover the whole piece
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't look very nice there.
right.
Right.
I feel like I had read at some point, and I could be just totally remembering this wrong, that there's some right to generate solar energy on your property that's a state legislation. I feel like at some point I had read something about that or wind energy generation.
Hmm.
I'm wondering if that's the history behind it being present in all of the places.
I've run into just recently that electrical equipment needs to be any new electrical equipment needs to have space to provide ability to add solar onto roofs, and I think that's a state energy code.
Sorry.
I was just looking at our wind energy conversion systems or, windmills. And those are limited to, right now, in our local commercial, general commercial, IG industrial and IL industrial and agricultural. So those, I mean, So maybe something more of that would be appropriate instead of a kind of across the board.
I mean, if it makes sense somewhere, then that's fine. I'm happy with putting it in there, but if it
Mhm.
doesn't make sense, let's not have it as an option.
Right, right. Okay. That's good. Connect, solar point. And I'm going to follow up on those couple of things as well. So, okay.
There are some dimensional requirements specific to those as well. Setback requirements, 100 feet from a front property line, 50 feet from a side or rear. So it could
Eliminate it, just.
eliminate it just on
Yeah,
those
just on
dimensional
that.
requirements in a lot of areas. Nonetheless, it would probably be good to just adjust that anyways, for what is appropriate. So I think that's something for us to look at. There are some additional site development requirements in Part D, so after the dimensional standards. Trying to get cross-connection, cross-activity in terms of driveways and access and so forth to have that provision in there, sidewalk connections. Also, there is, and this is probably something that we'll want to coordinate with the, when Section 630, which is our sign section in the ordinance, is to talk about, and we did that with the mixed-use neighborhood part, but having some limitations on signage as well. So we envision these areas not being our, US 31 intensive commercial. These tend to be not quite that, a little bit more than our mixed-use neighborhood that we envision here along Veterans, but still more at a less intensive scale. So we wanted to have some of those provisions in there in terms of signage, in terms of what that, so that there's a certain kind of character to the district. Certainly, the general commercial and those more intensive ones, you can kind of do the freestanding signs, but the intent here is to try to create a certain aesthetic in it and still allow for signs, but more in the form of monument signs, that type of thing. Take another stab at that and bring it back to you.
I was gonna say, you wanna talk about sidewalks?
I always want to talk about sidewalks.
All right, I'm good with what you
Thanks,
got.
good discussion.
Yeah, good feedback.
Yeah, that was very good. Thank you.
So the next one is, why it's listed as data centers is not specifically calls it out as data centers. So what we've been trying to do is create a process to deal with, and right now I've kind of come up with this working term of intensive industrial facilities and operations. So we have if you call just going through that Cherryland Electric site plan, there was some additional standards in both the IG and IL. In this case, it was the IG, or E4, where it says potential impacts on neighboring properties. And it goes through and it basically says, to ensure compatibility in terms of fumes, gas, noise, smoke, dust, heat, glare, vibrations, that there can be some effort by the reviewing body to, reduce those particular impacts. And it talks about a finding process. I think that section could probably be upgraded and revised a little bit, but it's almost like there needs to be a process where a reviewing body in this case, most likely the planning commission, but it could in some case maybe a township board, I don't know. But that you go through a process of evaluating what the proposal is. And so the next step in conducting a findings, if there are certain qualifiers or descriptions that may apply to that, and here there's listed A through H under that, and these aren't necessarily what those in detail, but just kind of give you some illustration that if you're going through a findings and then you find that this is a building that's, large scale, high ceiling manufacturing buildings, it has heavy equipment, heavy machinery, state-of-the-art technology, includes a lot of environmental controls, a high energy consumption, water intakes and so forth are used in its operations. It's a complex system for moving goods, so it's a logistics hub or logistics center, storage systems, large-scale storage tanks, storage and retrieval systems, could be hours of operation, so round the clock, 24/7, type of minimal downtime situation. So if you could evaluate that and come to some findings that that particular industrial development hits those requirements, then a host of special standards would apply. And that's where the following A through J has, talks about standards that would apply to location of that. It would talk about, it would apply a special set of lot and building standards. For instance, right now, like in our IL, if we move data centers over to IL, we don't have any minimum lot area. We could incorporate minimum lot sizes. We could have required setbacks, operational standards, so you could talk about things of hours of operation. Things have to be within an enclosed building. There could be performance standards, and performance standards are those things that are measured in some form, usually noise, emissions, vibration. One of the things that we have a challenge when you put those performance standards in place is how are those measured and evaluated? We don't have the staff to do that, so you have to be thinking about how would that be addressed, how would that be measured, how would that be enforced, and so forth. Talking about access to roadways, environmental and safety precautions. So this is a big one, the environmental part. Reading some ordinances around the state of Michigan that are putting together stuff related to data centers, requests environmental impact statements or environmental impact assessments. And you have to be careful when you apply something, that terminology, because you have to, further define it, but then you also have to give basis to it. We don't really regulate a lot of the environment. It's usually the state does in many cases. And if we apply, so let's say we say, okay, if you're going to do this facility, you got to do an environmental impact statement. We have to have some basis for it. We have to say, okay, what would that apply to? So we were thinking internally, it could be things that might be areas that we want to protect. For instance, if it's in, let's say, the Kids Creek watershed, which we know is part of that watershed is impaired. So we would want to know that there's going to be certain, if it was located in that watershed, let's say, that there would be certain protections. But we would have to identify that in some, most likely the master plan or some way, so that if we are going to require any types of these environmental assessments, that it's based on something of that nature. So it's something to be mindful of, because from reading some of these ordinances, they're extremely technical, and most townships are, why they're very strong measurements, they might have decibel limits, they might have, some emission standards, like, we have no way of measuring that. So that's one of the things, if we go in the route on some of these things, we have to be mindful of that. And just kind of wrapping it up there, decommissioning plans, so this would be similar to some of the language that we have for solar arrays and for windmills. Compliance in terms of access to ensure that their standards are being met. So escrows, we do use review escrows for technical reviews, so we do have the ability to apply those to ensure that we can have reviews. And then certainly performance guarantees that may be appropriate. So this would be applied, again, not to strictly data centers, but other types of industrial impacts. So I'm just kind of laying this out as a concept and just kind of get whatever your feedback is.
So more of a discussion point than any recommendation. I know that LEED accreditation, some levels of LEED require building monitoring. So how much electricity is used, how much water is used. I don't know if we could incorporate LEED standards into these things. It seems like a very costly item to do, but if you're going to put in a big data center, you have a whole bunch of money to do it anyways. So that may help with monitoring these items that the township's concerned about.
I did see that in one ordinance I was looking at, and I could take another look at that. So that would be data in terms of their operation, like energy consumption, water consumption, that type of thing. That's a possibility. I guess the question is that it would be part of to help us determine that compliance aspect of it, because the one thing that's really difficult about ordinances that we're always mindful of is, okay, you put that ordinance in place, you put those standards, how is the zoning administrator going to ensure that that development is meeting those requirements? It becomes very difficult for us in terms of enforcement, that type of thing. But if there are provisions in advance, so if there is some type of required monitoring, and maybe there's and I don't know the legalities of this, but it's something, all this is going to be reviewed by the attorney, but is there some way that we could require
Yearly report.
annual report of something that has to be submitted? I don't know if we can do that or not. But certainly on the front end, now what we use with that data, that's a good question, but at least it'll give us some measurement to say, okay, they appear to be operating fine or within what's to be expected to be normal, or we notice a big spike in energy use or something or whatever. It gives us some information. What we do beyond that, I'm not quite sure, but that could be something that could be considered in there.
Can you withdraw a special use permit for noncompliance?
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah, there's a revocation provision in there. Starts with a public hearing and so forth. But yeah,
If we have limits on, let's say a big factory wants to come in, whatever it is, if we have limits on how much water they can use, how much electricity they can pull off our grid, how much emissions they can have, or whatever those things, we should get those things on a print when they come in. They should be able to tell us, here's a gauge that's going to be on here that's going to let us use 100,000 gallons a day, or whatever it is, whatever the number is. Can we do it that way? I mean, we might have several different things that we don't feel would be appropriate here. So, okay, you can only use this much water. you can only use this much electricity, you can only use that, and keep that scale closer to what I'm hearing people think is more appropriate for here.
Can we regulate that in a zoning ordinance?
Well, certainly we can require that information, but then I think that's where we would consult with, let's say, whoever the energy provider is. Certainly if it comes to water, municipal water, we're a provider of that. If it's, well water, that's probably a discussion with Eagle. But that's the thing, like what, even if we had a number in there, let's say it's limited to it, like what is that based on? What if it's, what if whoever the energy provider says, well, that's fine, we can provide that. It's almost like we need their assessment of that data, whatever's presented. And that's why I think where we would use the review escrow, so we would have some evaluation of that. So if they present their numbers that we're going to use this much energy, this much water, et cetera, then we would want to be able to, retain somebody to assess that, to maybe contact with the utilities and so forth and determine, is this an excessive impact? Is this acceptable? So that's kind of what, similar to like a traffic impact study. So if, we've done that on a few projects where they're required to put a traffic impact study, we require them to submit an escrow where we retain our own traffic engineer to evaluate, kind of doing a peer review of that and determine whether that's appropriate or not. So we're kind of banking it on those experts to kind of evaluate it in the case of a traffic impact study from a traffic engineer's point of view, and what is going to be the impact. And if there are things that need to be mitigated or addressed, then we would have a basis for it. But I would almost kind of want to do, ensuring that we have some type of criteria that allows us to do that on those different issues, whether it's some of the performance standards, the emission type stuff, or whether it's energy use or water use. But I think it might be difficult for us to put numbers to it.
Does the state of Michigan have any guidelines? I know I heard something that the state has put a moratorium on, or was going to put a moratorium on building data centers.
I think it's being considered. I don't know if it's
Yeah,
been adopted.
I think there's a legislator that maybe have introduced that. The irony in that is that right now the state has some pretty aggressive incentives for data centers, so I don't know. It kind of runs counter to what the administration is doing, so I'm not sure where that's going to go, but I've heard that, yes.
But the Michigan State or the state of Michigan doesn't have any development guidelines.
No, where they would come into play though are on some of these standards and requirements. For instance, emissions, we would rely on like Eagle's Air Quality Division, some of those environmental impact areas as well. We would be relying on those standards. Whether those meet our expectations is another question.
And how are those monitored too?
Right. Well, that's what I think it's important for us to have some way to monitor these uses in a way, at least to collecting data and information. Then, so if we do see something, we can share that with Eagle and say, is this excessive or not?
Or if they are monitored, is it tied to an Eagle permit? Like, do they have an active permit that could be tied to, maintaining, that's part of maintaining a special use permit, is that you maintain all your state and local licenses and permits? Is that something that could be tied to?
I have a couple of thoughts. One is on the performance standards. One thing that came up in that webinar was actually temperature variances. Talk about difficult to measure and track and whatever, but that was something that came up was, heat exchange. What came to mind also was having some sort of utility sign off, and it sounds like we're headed down that path, so I like that. One thing that is completely out of left field for us locally, I don't think we have any analog to this, but other communities have done it for this and other high-impact projects, is some kind of financial community benefit offset. To your point, these guys have plenty of money, and if they're creating negative community impacts, sometimes there can be financial offsets to that. I know that's way outside our normal wheelhouse, but I'm bringing it up. And then the open question to me is still whether it's worth our while to do some kind of time-limited moratorium while we figure this out. Even though we're 99% sure nothing's coming across your desk tomorrow, it'd be terrible if we had a mechanism to prevent that moving forward until we have our ducks in a row, and we didn't take advantage of that. I don't know how others feel on that issue.
I'm nervous about my moratoriums.
You're nervous about going forward with a moratorium?
Yeah, just because it kind of draws attention to the subject.
Point taken.
So, yeah, so a couple things on that. So right now, the township manager's been talking with the township attorney about provision actually amending the ordinance to not speak to a moratorium for data centers, but moratoriums in general, because moratoriums technically are not permitted by state law. They're, through case law, they've been able to be established. So there's a certain process that you have to go through that's been accepted by the courts to allow a community to bring its standards up to par. So they've talked about amending our zoning ordinance so that it could be that if should there be other issues that come up in the future, if we have to establish a moratorium, it's going to be a much more easier process, and it will have basis for it. So we'll have, it's not something that's just kind of a resolution, let's say, by the township board, but more or less, let's say it's in our zoning ordinance. If there's basis for it to go forward with a moratorium. So he's working right now through that process to get that in place. So then that way we can apply it to not just, let's say, data centers, but whatever might come up. And we know there'll be some type of use in the future that we may want to apply a moratorium to. So that's on that part. And then as a, on the financial impact, that one would probably not apply in Michigan, because that would be considered like an impact fee, which Michigan does not permit in terms of, a lot of states do. A lot of states say if you're going to build a development and you're contributing to traffic, you have to contribute funding for some of those impacts. So not to say there couldn't be some way to maybe apply it here, I don't know, maybe there is, but through the ordinance or anything of that way would most likely not be permitted in Michigan. And then I just want to mention one other thing. I did have a conversation with a gentleman locally that works in the industry and did give me some information. They actually locally here, but they site data centers nationally. And he indicated that there would probably be no likely anybody wanting to site anything north of kind of the line from Grand Rapids across to Midland. Mainly from a lot of different things. Energy consumption is extremely high. And this might be for the hyperscale type of facilities. The fiber service here is not at a scale that's needed. He did indicate too that the industry is moving a lot away from water consumption because it doesn't make any sense. This gentleman was in the industry for the last 20 years. When they were kind of starting out in some of the areas, like in the Northwest United States, water was relatively abundant, but then when they try to translate that type of technology to, let's say, Phoenix, it didn't work. So they are doing, which causes these systems to use a lot more energy, electricity and so forth, if they're not using the water to keep things cooled and so forth. And it doesn't surprise me that what he's made those statements, because I've often looked at the lower peninsula of Michigan as kind of like a cul-de-sac. You know, if you look at it like our urban growth and development within Michigan as a whole, it doesn't come this far north. You know, we don't have the freeways and so forth and the services coming up to this extent.
I feel like Traverse City is getting that way, though.
I would say we see it from people living here and moving here from a residential standpoint. I don't see it from a development. When I was working at the county and we were working on economic development, this is just a side story, we'd go down to Lansing where we were, had meetings with the Michigan Economic Development Corporation and, representing the Traverse City area. They'd be talking about projects in Ann Arbor and, Lansing, Detroit, Grand Rapids, or whatever. And then when they return to the group of us from Traverse City and say, oh yeah, we're going to be up there next weekend golfing. So we were the playground. And if you look at it, I mean, we do some manufacturing here, but it's usually fairly limited. And that's just general of what we are, is in terms of our identity. That being said, it doesn't mean that we couldn't have these. It's to some extent, to some scale. And I'm thinking of when you look at like the Amazon distribution center that we have, it's very small, but it serves a purpose for this area. So it's not like something you would see down in, say, Grand Rapids area or other parts of southern Michigan. So I still think it's good to pursue it, but I think what we're trying to do is apply it to a broader sense as opposed to just going into a narrow part and applying the standards, because there could be a lot of other types of industrial uses that we could see far sooner than we would see a data center, and if we can have some standards that can apply. And I think this is intended to be broad enough so that if there's something that's not covered, we would ensure we would have a process to evaluate it to determine its impact. And I think that's probably the most important one, because the problem with standards is technology changes, industries change. And when you lock into numbers and so forth, you're constantly having to go back and adjust those. I mean, we're really good at like numbers, dimensional numbers, setbacks, lot widths, those types of things. But when it comes to regulating uses and intensity of uses, some of those standards, they can change over time. So we want to be able to have the latest evaluation in terms of industry standards, that type of thing, whatever the state is requiring at that time.
I feel like that's a better approach than just saying one zoning ordinance for data centers. Trying to encompass more than one use in the standard is forward thinking.
Potentially more, I don't necessarily want to say defensible, but like if we're studying like not just one, we're not just picking on one use. We're looking at, all right, what are the impacts of not just that one use, but any similar intent use or something that may be created in the future, wherever technology goes, who knows at this point. Where will AI take us? But yeah, I think it makes it a little more comprehensive, kind of, and seems to be like a better long-term way to handle the zoning ordinance aspect of it. I also, as a little aside, I did listen in on a webinar from University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee that was also about data centers, used some examples from Wisconsin and Minnesota, and part of the difference that really doesn't apply here is that we also in northern Michigan did not necessarily get the like large-scale industrial development that other major cities did. So we don't necessarily have, which we also avoided then abandonment of those industrial facilities. So one of the communities doing it in Wisconsin, they're actually doing a data center, but it's on the site of a former GM plant that was demolished. So they have a large brownfield. We do not have that scale of brownfield anywhere in northern Michigan. So the sort of incentive to even use it in that way is not here as well. So it's just sort of another reason that like this is potentially going to cause more issues than not. And by doing this, maybe we head off any potential issues with these down the line, which if they are decommissioned, to be prepared for that.
It's not included here, but we did draft a revised definition, and the goal is to put these as special use permits only in the IL district, which is our heavy industrial district. So that, we would probably change, we're probably gonna have to take be careful of that though too, because we have identified, I know at least recently, as one use. I wouldn't call it a data center, but the definition currently in the ordinance has data center and computer operations or computer systems operations, and so we classified one business. It's kind of a software company. So I think what we would do is, and it's in the IG industrial district as a use by right. I think what we would do is probably change that as an office, and having the ability within that office, obviously, to do computerized operations. I don't think it's technically anything like a data center. It just happens that they're using a lot of different software for design and so forth. So it's just one of those things that internally we just have to be careful of how we change things based on some of the things. We don't want to create any type of non-conforming situation. But that's not here, but I thought just kind of at least want to see what your thoughts were on this, if we were on the right track, and then we can come back with some more.
This is a ton of forward motion in a short couple of months, so thank you for putting so much effort into this.
Well, thank you. Yeah.
More discussion to come, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Like I said, we usually do a package, although depending on the pace of some of these, some are further along than others, we might want to split up. I think that's also up to Plan Commission. If we're ready to forward something that we're a little further along on, we can always do that and continue studying anything that needs to be studied. You never run out of zoning ordinance updates. We could do that all day long if we wanted to. So, thank you. Those are a lot of good comments. I took a lot of notes, so we'll have a lot to follow up on.
So we got through all of the zoning ordinance amendments, correct?
Correct.
All right. So we are moving on to 6C, which is PD 2026-43, review of the Planning Commission bylaws.
Okay. So we last discussed this at the, we didn't discuss anything at the joint meeting of the Board and Plan Commission, but back at the January study session, we had the bylaws, and both as just a refresher and introduction to some of the newer Plan Commission members. There was a lot of discussion on the delivery of the agenda and packet item, and sort of how to state that. So we did draft some language that potentially gives some options. So currently it says the agenda and accompanying materials should be mailed to Planning Commission members, so it is reasonably expected to be received prior to the weekend, prior to the regular meeting date. Generally accepted to be, but not always, mailed by first-class mail on Thursday of the week prior to the Planning Commission meeting. So we drafted something to try to at least give some options and maybe make it less prescriptive right in the bylaws, but to at least give some options. So we sort of modified it as a draft language. The agenda and accompanying materials shall be provided to Planning Commission members at least 4 days prior to the meeting date to allow the commissioners to review the materials in advance of the meeting. The agenda and accompanying materials may be provided in the following ways. Mailed by first-class mail, so it can reasonably be expected to be received by the Planning Commission members 4 days prior to the meeting date. Hard copies made available to Planning Commission members to be picked up at Township Hall, or digital copies provided electronically to Planning Commission members. And hopefully that covers all bases. That was the biggest area we discussed. We did kind of comment on a couple other things. Some brought up by Planning Commission, some that we also just noticed in sort of reviewing it. There's a section that talks about liaisons, sort of communications with other entities, and one of them says Northwest Michigan Council of Governments planning staff. We're suggesting changing to Networks Northwest Community Development Staff, since that's kind of what they're doing business as. I don't know if they ever officially changed their name. It's just a doing business as
Correct.
Networks Northwest, but that's sort of how they used. I don't know if we'd need to reference anyone else, but that since that one's on a line on its own, to kind of comment on that. Someone commented the principles to principles. We highlighted that. we didn't recommend any changes, but we acknowledge that part of the discussion was that the free and open debate should take place on issues before the Plan Commission. Such debate should only occur at meetings of the Plan Commission. Just to reiterate that that also includes any other gatherings where a quorum may be present, and also email where its quorum is copied. I don't think that has been an issue, but just to verify that that is covered under that. Also, there is a section, we didn't suggest any language changes at this time, and maybe it's something we want to revisit in the future, but there is a section about training, and it says, provided the Garfield Township budget for that fiscal year includes funds to pay for necessary tuition, registration, travel expenses, each member shall have attended at least 4 hours per year of training in planning and or zoning during the member's current term of office. Failure without cause to meet the training requirements shall be grounds for the member not being reappointed to the Plan Commission. I don't know if we've ever tracked training, at least since I've been here, or necessarily we've. Last year we did some that was brought to. We did it just kind of by video or recording of. We did one from MSU Extension and one from East Bay Township. But I don't know if we've tracked like a formal training process. This is another one where maybe at some point in the future we revisit this. Does this need to be as prescriptive in the bylaws, or do we actually need to have some more formal training? There's always things out there. We were talking earlier about MAP does a pretty robust planning commissioner training. I think it actually is 4 hours, which is always a good option, especially for newer appointees. That is very helpful training. MAP being the professional organization, I think everyone's on the newsletter or gets that newsletter from, has the planning commissioners around the state as members. They're very good at doing training for planning commission members. Like I said, we didn't have any language changes as of right now, but just something in through reading that, I noticed it, so I just thought it might be worth pointing out.
My concern with your last point is the accountability.
Mm-hmm.
Would anybody take training if they're not accountable to it?
Right.
Even the licensure for architecture, the state requires 24 hours within 2 years, and
Mm-hmm.
it's pretty much a checkbox in the form you submit when you redo your payment, which seems
Runs on the honor system a little bit.
yeah, too much on the honor system.
Okay. We do, for AICP, American Institute of Certified Planners, we do 32 every 2 years, and it's tied to, we actually do log any certification maintenance or continuing ed credits, usually tied to conferences or sometimes webinars. I think the data center webinar we listen to counts as some training, CM credits. But we actually do log ours for professional certification.
The MAP basic training one that Steve mentioned, it's 4 hours long, and I know it's hard because you're here twice a month doing meetings, so we'd like to bring stuff to you if we can. But at the same time, the study session is to go over other items. But we thought maybe at some point this year, and I know we may have talked to before about it, but maybe take one of those study sessions and just essentially cancel it or convert it into a workshop, studies, a planning workshop, education workshop, having their basic training. We could have, they do provide instructors. It would be good for you to hear somebody other than Steve or I, another different professional planner in the state. We could open it up to have other communities come in if they wanted to, but have it at your regular scheduled meeting so that you don't have to make anything. We might want to adjust the time so that maybe we start a little bit earlier to get done at a reasonable time, but
Is this something that we can invite East Bay Township and Long Lake Township's planning commissions to?
Potentially.
well, yeah, I mean, there's been opportunities out there before, but I just felt like maybe the planning commission here doesn't want to have to go go another evening, committed during the month. So if we can bring it here, and then if they want to join in, we'd be more than welcome to do it. But
I think East Bay has hosted some for, I think they did
Yeah.
some ZBA trainings and invited the other ZBA members out to there as a joint training.
Yeah. I mean, it helps to hear from, to bring in some of those other planning commissioners. I was just trying to do it more on your schedule so that it makes it convenient for you guys.
This training is really something that the township is talking about doing. It's not a state thing. I'm a realtor, I have to go for Con Ed, all the, everybody who's in a professional thing
Mhm.
goes for Con Ed, but this is not a state regulated, they wouldn't be tracked that way at all. It's whether you guys feel like there's enough training,
Mhm.
but the 4 hours is just it's not any kind of a regulation or anything like that.
That's just in our
You could
bylaws.
do
That's nothing.
2 hours here, an hour there.
Right.
However you wanted to do it, it's not-
Right.
Yeah.
Have you ever kicked anybody off the planning commission for?
I
No, I don't think.
don't believe
it's up to the
so.
town board, but
Right.
yeah, no, I don't think, and this is not unusual, so I mean, I think there's, most communities have this type of provision within their bylaws of some sort or some type of policy, but, actually getting the training is sometimes a bit of a challenge too. I think the opportunities are there, but like I said, when you're already going to 2 meetings a month, taking up your evening time, and then having to do something above and beyond it, that's why I was thinking, like, I could easily see us foregoing one of our study sessions and bringing in an instructor. The MAP workshops, I think, are done very well. They've been doing them for years and years. And they've been refined, they've got good instructors, so I think they're pretty good. I've actually did one myself, contracted one, and did one time, so I'm kind of familiar with the basic one. It has a ZBA component in it too, so we could potentially include the ZBA members if they wanted to join in. But I find it's helpful because then you can get into not just standards and stuff, but like processes and how you conduct yourself. It gives you a little bit more comfort level in when you're doing your job as a planning commissioner. So.
Okay.
So we got a draft here. I don't know if you want to take action on it with those, just with the changes that Steve mentioned.
Right.
My one comment is that you say the agenda and the delivery of agenda, you say 4 days a lot prior to the meeting, so at the commission members at least 4 days prior to the meeting date to allow the commissioners to review the materials, then put a mailed by first class mail so that it can responsibly be expected to be received by the planning commission members 4 days prior to the meeting date.
Mhm.
Is the second 4 days prior to the meeting date needed if it's already in the
Oh, yeah, I see what you're saying.
top
Yeah.
portion?
Maybe that's more of a reflexive reference to, like, that we have to mail it, like, it takes mail a few days to actually arrive there, so that we mail it in advance of that, so that you guys get it at that point.
So you might mail on Tuesday instead of Thursday? Are you gonna have agendas together?
Wednesday, let's go with Wednesday.
Wednesday, Thursday?
Right. Mm-hmm. I mean, I was actually having this discussion earlier. We certainly acknowledge mail has been made more difficult now that everything's not sorted locally. One thing we could do, but that could involve some additional complications, is like we could try to move back deadlines as much. Like if we need to mail it out by Wednesday or Tuesday, then we need stuff from applicants the prior Tuesday. The problem starts being when things start backing up into the previous meeting. Like I drafted the agenda and shared it with John. We reviewed the agenda for the April 8th meeting today. So like we tried to get stuff to administrative staff to print out packets, but like we can't get the minutes because the meeting's going on right now. Like there's no minutes yet.
Yeah.
Like that, so we can only back up so far.
I think you have enough options.
Yeah.
You can either mail it, most people just pick it up
Right.
here, and if everybody knows the rules are, it's gonna be sent 4 days before the
Yeah.
meeting, and if you don't get your mail on time, which I never do, so.
Yeah.
As long as it's available to us on the computer, what difference does it make?
Right. As long as it's available 4 days. Yeah.
You could get it on, your
Yeah.
computer. It's hard to
No, my
read.
computer stuff normally pops up on Thursday afternoon.
How do you read those big?
Just turn your computer on, it's a piece of cake.
Zoom
Forget who you're
function.
talking to.
There's a Zoom function on there.
Anybody
Oh.
like to make a motion on this
Oh,
one?
before that happens, John, you had distributed this from MEC Extension. I don't think it's necessarily any language that needs to change in the bylaws, but there was some question on how should members of a public body, in this case, Plan Commission, approval of meeting minutes if they were absent for the meeting. At least to me, on sort of page 3, it's kind of explains, voting to approve the minutes is not you affirming you were an eyewitness, but that you're confident in the secretary, other members, and the process that produced the minutes, so that members should not abstain from that process. Also, we have the added benefit that meetings are recorded, so members, if they miss a meeting, can also watch a meeting if they want to go into more detail on what was produced. So, that was just, if there was an open question, so MSU Extension, also a good resource for training of Plan Commission members, often has good answers to questions like that.
There was that one question I had that time I was gone, and you had me sign the minutes that were approved when I wasn't here. Is that, and then you guys were gonna look into it or something, but that was, so I signed the minutes that you approved when I was absent.
Yeah.
So I really wasn't here to see you approve them, but anyway, I brought that to your attention.
Yeah.
But we're gonna just keep doing what we were doing. I mean, we don't know if that was correct.
I think, at least looking at this, it seems to be the same kind of, like, you're acknowledging the process, and just as a secretary, you're the one signing it, so, yeah, you know that the process happened.
Okay.
Yeah, at least, yeah. I'm sort of like, unless we're told otherwise, that seems to make sense. So, yeah.
Kara, would you like a motion?
Sure would.
Okay. I'll make the motion to recommend to the Township Board that the proposed amended Planning Commission bylaws as attached to Planning Department Report 2026-46 be adopted.
Support.
Agostinelli and support from Robertson. Any discussion? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Catching us up on that.
Mm-hmm.
All right, under 7, new business, we have nothing, which takes us to 8, public comment, which we have no public. So that takes us to 9, other business, which we also have none. 10, items for next agenda. Did you guys want to speak anything on that?
We have several agenda, a lot that you've already seen before, but it's going to be a little bit of a packed agenda. A couple public hearings for Sugar Plum and Copper Ridge with the former Harbor Light Christian Center site. Findings of fact for a couple of rezonings, Veliket and Dunn. Findings of fact for Marengo, 31 and their proposed amendment, and a few new things. I think there was Chipotle, Grand Traverse Mall, update to the sound study from High Tops at Cherryland Center, and a third one that I can't remember.
It was a...
Oh, extension request for 3066 North Garfield, another special use permit that is approaching the end of that is going to request a 1-year extension. So
Sounds like a busy night.
It'll be
I'm
a busy-
glad, Chair
yes.
DeGood gave me the easy one.
Make a motion, we adjourn.
There you go.
All right, thank you.